Hi everyone, it's Rachel and Anthony.
Hello.
From Don't Crop Me Now, and today we are going to be talking about pruning fruit trees. Now the time of year is very important when you are considering pruning your fruit trees. We are currently in mid-January and that is the perfect time to do the majority of the pruning work on apple and pear trees. However, stone fruits such as plum, cherries, peach, etc., you shouldn't be doing major pruning work at this time of year on those trees, and this is because it can encourage the risk of getting a fungal disease which is called silver leaf. So before we get into the nitty-gritty about a strategy for pruning those fruit trees, I just wanted to point out in quite close up where you should be making the cuts on the branches of the trees. It's quite important to make sure that you cut just after a bud. This is because if you leave a long bit of stem after that bud, there's quite a high likelihood that that area of stem may die off, which could introduce disease. There are two different types of buds to look out for. So you've got the buds that will form the flowers, and these are a little bit more downy and they're a bit of a larger size. And then there are the buds that are going to form the leaves. They are usually a lot smaller and they're not quite as downy or fuzzy. So if we have an example of a really good look on this branch, you can see where we didn't prune this tree brilliantly last year, or there's just been a lot of growth in the last season, which could well happen because it was a really hot summer. So you can see that there's only really one fruiting bud on the end of the branch, but there's lots of leaf buds. So now let's focus on a strategy, and we use this simple 4-stage strategy. Firstly, we're going to look for any diseased or dead wood and take that out. We're then going to look for any crossing branches, and then we will look for a general shaping strategy, including looking at the height and the type of shape you wish to have for your tree. So when considering if there is any dead or diseased parts on your tree, look really thoroughly. Most of our trees are actually looking in pretty good shape, but as you can see here, we do have an area of a branch here that has started to become diseased and die off. So this would need to come out. Also to consider within dead and diseased is if there are any broken branches. Now let's focus a little bit on lichen. Having a little bit of lichen on the bark of your tree does not mean that your tree is dead and diseased. It is normal to have small amounts of lichen. However, if you have got lots and lots of lichen within your branches, it's likely that that tree branch isn't particularly healthy, and it might be a good idea to take out those areas with a lot of lichen. Let's consider crossing branches. So crossing branches can literally mean a branch that is physically crossing. However, it can also include those branches that are growing in the direction and that will become crossing over the next couple of seasons. Now there are many different shapes that you can prune your fruit trees into, and we will show you some examples of those also. But I just wanted to use this pear tree as an example of a nice sort of generalised shape. So as you can see, this is what I would personally call a bit of a bush shape. It does have multiple trunks on, but that means it's got a nice open centre. And that's always a good idea, because remember, we've talked a lot about fungal diseases and we want to try to avoid those. And the more air you can have flowing through the centre of your tree, the better it is in that respect. Also consider here the height of the tree. I am about 5'3" or 5'3.5", I like to remind Anthony of, and you can see that the top of this tree is probably going up to about 9 foot at the moment. Now most trees are grown on a grafting rootstock that you may buy to plant as a fruit tree on your allotment or in your vegetable garden. But they still will have a reasonable amount of vigour in their growth. And remember, there is no point letting your tree just get taller and taller and taller. Firstly, it gets difficult to reach that fruit. It also blocks light out for the rest of your plot or your growing area or within your garden. And finally, as you may be hearing in the background, because we forgot the mic for today's video, if you allow your trees to get really tall and spindly, they are going to be more affected by that wind, and therefore you're more likely to get broken and therefore damage to your tree during winter. So we've talked a little about general shaping of trees, but there are many different shapes that you can train or grow your trees into. In the main, we tend to use this sort of generalized goblet type open shape. However, you can also consider growing them in a beautiful fan shape. This means that it can really save space. For example, it could be grown up against a wall. Another really key way of saving space is to cordon apple trees and pear trees. And this means that you can get plenty of trees within a small space, all together within one line, and therefore you can increase the variety that you can fit within your growing space. A final tip on that general shaping is to remember that you can actually remove up to about a third of the new growth from the end of each growing tip. That can be a really good way of preventing what we were talking about at the beginning, where you have these longer stems that is just going to be all leaf with a tiny bit of fruit on the top. The more you keep on top of that, the more compact you will keep the shape of your tree. So for example here, you can see where this has been pruned before. So this is actually new growth from last year, which is why we've got lots of leaf and this one fruiting bud on the end. So you can take out up to a third of that just on general. So say we were to cut there, we can cut this here, and you can see that the bud is actually on this side, pointing out this way, which is really good because if this continues to grow, it will grow out in this direction, because you want to avoid cutting where the branch will grow in a direction that it would cause a crossing branch. So let's take that out there. You can take out up to a third of any of the ends of your branches that you want to do to keep it more compact. Just bear in mind you don't cut off all your fruiting tips like I've just done there. You don't want to do that on every single branch if the only fruit you've got is going to be on the end of your branches. But the more you keep on top of that, the more compact shape you'll get over the years, and the better compact fruiting you will have as well. When you are considering shaping your tree, you might find, particularly if it's been left for some time, that you want to consider taking larger branches out of the tree. If you're going to do this, do not do too much at once. It's better to do about a quarter of the tree for any larger branches you want to take out, and then consider any more in subsequent years. But if you are going to use a pruning saw like this, it's really important that you cut as close to the main stem as possible. Any sort of little nubbly sticky bits that stick out, again, are likely to get disease, and they will not heal as well on the main trunk or the large branches. This here is not an absolutely massive branch, but it's definitely forming a crossing branch. So when you use a saw, get right into close to the larger bits of the stem as you can, and make a really clean cut. If you are considering growing as many different varieties of fruit as you can, then grafting multiple types onto one tree is an absolutely brilliant way of achieving this. We have grafted 5 different types of eating apple onto this one tree, and we only did this is the second season, but as you can see, there's been some really vigorous growth so far. So let's consider pruning tools. You do not need loads and loads of kits to prune your fruit trees, but a few tools are really quite key to doing a good job. And the first one of these is a decent pair of secateurs. Now these look like they're a little bit old, but they are very sharp and they're a good pair of secateurs. You really want to try to make sure that you get clean cuts wherever you're cutting branches, because we've talked about damage before, and any damage is where disease is going to get in. We do have these smaller loppers, and again, try and make sure these are sharp, but these will get through bigger branches. This is not an amazing set. We've probably had this at least 15 years. It's really on its way out. It's certainly, this one probably needs a bit of a sharpen itself. If you need to get through any larger branches, then you can get a pruning saw like this. They are very effective. You can get right into those branches and get really clean cuts. And finally, we did say you don't want your trees being too high, but if you want to take that height out every single year, you might find you need something like this, which is a blade here. This is an extendable lopper, and it will get those branches that are going directly vertical. So I hope you have all enjoyed the video today, and if you have, please like, comment and subscribe. It only takes a minute, but it really helps our channel. Take care everyone. Bye.
Bye. I'm cold.